that was at 8 years old. So all of these things were normal. So I would not expect anything less. So let's get back into this whole thing about the victimizing or being a victim. Yes, children are innocent in the sense that their volitionary conscious mind does not have a choice. Because they're a child, they take on the nature of the parent. And so whatever the subconscious mind of the parent, if the parent subconsciously acts like a victim, the child will attract abuse or attract some form of victimization because they are picking up on the unconscious level, on the subconscious level of being a victim. So when we understand children, because some people ask us, well, how can that happen to a child? How can a God like this? How can God why? God, the divine mind, which is God the Father, does not infringe upon free will. The divine mind never infringes upon free will. That is the Father. The Father will never infringe. Even when we see the Christ, that he begins to say, if it be your will, let this cup pass from mine. Nevertheless, not thy will. The Father does not infringe upon free will. It is against the law. For him to infringe upon free will goes against the law's nature. And the nature of the law is gentle, is long-suffering, is meekness, it's love, forgiveness. All of that is the nature of the divine mind. So it never infringes. Even though it knows the better way, it never infringes. It waits for you to come. Come unto me, and I will give you rest. The Christ, the divine mind within you, sits there waiting for you to come. Seek, and ye shall find me, waiting for you to come. Any man thirst, let him come, is waiting for you to come and find it. But it is never going to infringe upon your own volitionary will. And this is why we have to practice it through meditation. Meditation is your spiritual medication. You see, anytime we take medication or we need medication, it is because there's been an aspect that you did not, of the ego, that you did not put in the proper order in meditation. I'm going to say that again. Anytime you need medication, it is because there's an aspect of the volitionary conscious mind that you did not take into meditation. So as you learn these principles, you will start learning how meditation will begin to be the higher way of how you have to deal with things. I'm going to tell you something. One of the things that's very real, it's a very real thing, and it comes from the ego, is that there is a such thing as having panic attacks. This is not just stuff that's made up. And anyone that has ever had a medical emergency, you will see how you will go into a panic and go into a fear, and fear will come and grip you, and you see a whole bunch of stuff that shows up. If you never had a medical emergency, you won't know what I'm talking about. But those that have had medical emergency, had something show up, maybe it was a stroke, maybe it was a heart attack, maybe you had a whole left side go numb, maybe you had different weird things where you couldn't move. Whatever it was, you know how the lower mind operates. Palpitations, weird stuff with your heart, and all of a sudden you have that panic attack come. And if you're not quick enough, or you're not near a doctor or near someone to ease you or ease that type of stuff, you have to go to level. I was on the plane, and there was a man sitting next to me in my chair, and he was going into cardiac arrest. This might have been maybe a couple of weeks ago. I was coming back from Louisiana. I was seeing a particular partner. And it struck me so hard. And I saw this man on the plane. I was listening to my music. He sat right next to me on the plane. And somehow, while I was listening to my worship music and playing minding my business, I just had a vision of this man, like, grabbing his chest. And I said, oh, Lord. And I already knew what was coming. I said, Lord, why? Why? Why did you send this man on right to sit next to me? And so he's there, and he starts convulsing while he's sleeping. And he starts having an issue breathing, and he's going into cardiac arrest on the plane. I have to jump over the seat, and I have to tell the flight attendant. And this is a gospel. I haven't really told too many. I think maybe Jesse was there. He was on the other side in first class there because he was sitting on the other side across from me in first class. And so he's there, and he sees it, and he says, oh, my God. I jump up, and I have to jump over him and get the flight attendant and say, listen, I said, this man is going into cardiac arrest. And they yell on the plane. It says, is there any doctor? Is there any doctor on the plane? Is there any doctor? Code red or whatever the code thing that they call out. They call some code. And we're flying over the water. They can't land the plane. And so they bring a doctor on, and they start trying to give him oxygen, and they start trying to get him on the floor and doing all this type of stuff. And they're able to stabilize him a little bit, but they told him that he couldn't sleep. And this guy, I mean, you can tell he knew something was off in his body, never had this before in his life, and he was starting to, his oxygen was very low. He was losing oxygen in his body, and I overheard, because I had to go up in the front of the plane, and the flight attendants, they looked at me, and they said, you just saved someone's life. They said, wow. And they looked at me, and they said to me, they didn't know who I was. They said, are you an athlete? What are you? Because everyone saw me. I mean, I jumped over the seat. Imagine sitting down next to someone and jumping over the seat and sprinting up to the thing. So people saw me. They said, oh, my God. What? I literally jumped over. And this is like a pretty large man. He's probably had to weigh maybe 380 pounds, 360 pounds. And so Southern, big, Caucasian man. And I jump over, and I tell them, and I said, they said, well, we have to keep him awake because the doctor said you don't want him to fall asleep, and he was losing oxygen and all that other type of stuff. So I finally go back to my seat, and the guy is like really struggling in his seat. So I told him, I looked at him, and I said, you need to relax. I said, you're going to be fine. And he says, how do you know? I said, because your divine mind made sure that this happened around all of us here to make sure that you are fine, because it's not your time to go yet, and you have a lot of work to do. And he looked at me, and he started kind of crying. I said, so you need to relax. I said, this is what you're going to need to do. I said, you're going to need to tell yourself that you're fine. I says, the plane will be landing in about an hour. And I said, I want you to listen to this that's on my headphones. And I gave him my headphones to listen to it, and it put him in theta brain waves. And these are just little affirmations. I have affirmations that I keep on me, and I tell my students to keep stuff like this. I have little affirmations, and so I have affirmations of healing and affirmations of this. And I told him to listen to that, and all of a sudden, while he was listening to that, his oxygen began to come back into his body, and he was fine. Now, what happens, and I'm going to get a little spiritual here, is that when the volitionary conscious mind is at dis-ease and it is functioning as a dictator, okay? It's not functioning as the king and priest. It's functioning as a dictator. It harms the body. And this is where dis-ease or disease comes from. And as it harms the body, and as the body doesn't become a perfected vessel for the divine nature to operate in it, the divine nature will withdraw from the body. And so this is what was happening to this man. You can tell it was withdrawal from the body. But you can re-initiate the body to take back on the divine nature by bringing it back into the body. And so I knew, I'm not a doctor, but I knew that if he was able to get his mind or his brain in theta brain frequencies to calm him down, I knew that this panic attack or whatever this thing that was going on would stop happening. There was a lady sitting on the other side, and her grandmother just died, and she was panicking, and she kept on repeating, oh, my God, and I thought he was going to die. And I had to tell the lady, I said, shut up. I told her that on the plane. I said, shut up. I said, shut up. I told that lady that on the plane, and she looked at me like Karen. She was a Caucasian lady. She probably looked at me and never had a black man talk to her like that. I said, shut up. I said, don't say nothing. Go look over there. And the reason why is because she was putting stuff out of her own fear in this man's mind, and this man is already having a panic attack, and you're making this man feel or inserting that type of stuff. We don't need you to say that. We don't need you to put that in. That was the devil of her own ignorance coming out. I'm talking and speaking life into him, and this woman is on the other side talking about death and talking how bad it was. So I told her, shut up, and I said it. And I said it loud where everyone could hear me on the plane. And she rolled her eyes and didn't say another word on that plane. And the more that she didn't say a word, the more the guy's health came back together. Because I understood that we needed his divine self to minister to him, not his carnal self. Because the carnal mind operates through fear. And this is what this scripture here is teaching us. This is what this scripture here is showing us. This is what we are learning from this scripture here. Now, Matthew chapter 10, verse 36 talks about the foe, the enemy. And the enemy is within our own household. But we do not, and we want to make sure that if the enemy is within our own household, we don't want to trigger the enemy of our own volitionary carnal mind through things that other people will say to us, through fear that we watch on the news, through stuff that will try to come into our mind. It is the time to sit there and tap into your divine self, your higher self, who will bring all things to your remembrance, which will teach you new things, which will show you new things, which will bring new things into your mind. There was a story of a little kid. He was having some type of issue in his body, and the parent looked and thought something was wrong with the kid. The kid was like 9 or 10 years old, and the kid would go and just start eating salt. And the mom was saying, what is wrong with you? Stop eating salt. She kept on taking the salt away, and so finally she took all the salt out of the house, and the child died. And what she did not realize was that the child had a particular medical condition where he was losing fluids, and intuitively the 9-year-old or 10-year-old knew to put salt in his body. And so he was taking the salt and eating it, and just eating it raw, because his divine self was instructing him how to deal with that particular condition. You see, your divine self, your higher self, will show you how to deal with it if others do not know what it is. So let's give this next part, because I feel an unction that I'm ministering to someone. There is a such things as mysterious diseases or issues that show up in the body. These are things that you go to the doctor and they can't figure out what the hell is going on. And there's someone listening to me that has had or is dealing with this type of experience. It might be something in your stomach, might be something that shows up in your head area, might be some type of pain. But you go to the doctor, they do x-rays, they look at this, they look at that, they did this. It might be something that happens around your arm area or shoots down your arm, shoots down your spine, shoots down. You had them look at all the different types of stuff, and they can't figure it out. You've exhausted it. You went back and forth to the doctor. You told them, look at this, look at that, look at this, look at this, look at that. And they cannot figure out what it is. It is time for you to go to the next level and enter into the state of the subjective state to hear from the great physician. This is the mystery of physician, heal thyself.